everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Thrive series from Monash Diverse IT. The aim of the series is to bring you interviews with various industry professionals from minority communities who identify as thriving in their current careers. My name is Renee. I am an events officer with Diverse IT, and we are a student faculty group that aims to support underrepresented students in IT. And as one of those students myself, I find that sometimes the stories that we tend to hear about industry is that it can be hard to break in, maintain a career, feel fulfilled, and just feel really supported in a professional setting. And often we hear those things packaged in really important stories about how to tackle those very real experiences. But I think it's also important that we get some positive role models and that we hear stories about people just like us who are out there doing really well. So that's the aim of the Thrive series, to tell stories that acknowledge the journey and are authentic about that, but also are just showing us that there are people just like us, just like you and me, out there in industry right now, thriving. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our very first guest, Val Li. We're so excited to have them. Val is an openly trans non-binary software engineer working at Accenture. They graduated from Monash with a double degree in science and engineering. And since then, they have worked in defense and government. And then they landed at Accenture, where they have been working ever since, specializing in front end and back end development on big data projects and so much other amazing outreach work as well. They're just absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited. Welcome, Val. Thank you so much for coming.
Likewise, super happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We'll get started with the first question. So do you feel as though you can be your authentic self in the workplace? And what does that really mean to you?
But in terms of being authentic, I think that's a journey I'm still going through and something that I have yet to figure out. But I think in this workplace, they offer me the latitude to explore that particular question. And that's, I think, just as valuable as being able to express who your authentic self is if you figure that out.
Seeing, especially with gender and things like that, the process of expressing yourself is very much it's an ongoing thing. It's not just like, bang, now I'm me, you know. So it's really great that you have the room to figure that out for yourself. That's amazing. So in that journey, how long do you think that it took you to reach a position where you could kind of feel like you were thriving?
Gosh, these really good questions. I think a lot of joining the workforce is building up your reputation at different companies within the industry, so that people who work around you, people who care about you, respect you for your skills. And that's a currency that's really important in industry. So I think I was able to, at my current workplace, hit the ground running with regards to building that up. And so I was lucky enough to be supported by a really strong Pride network and a really supportive manager who have been able to help me explore different areas of the business to become a really strong and respected developer where I am. And while I don't think I'm yet thriving in the sense that I have explored all that I want to explore, I've settled into what I want to do for the rest of my life, I think I'm making really good progress in terms of learning what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, yeah, I've kind of grown up. I'm like 25, I'm in industry, but there's still a lot to learn. And I think in that sense, I'm definitely thriving with regards to learning.
And I think that's a really important perspective to look at it through, not as like an end point, but as kind of something that you can take with you. So, but building on that, sort of like that you've got a lot of support in the workplace. So when you feel like you need to access some sort of supports, where do you get that from? What does that look like for you?
So I'm very well supported in the workplace by my team. And there are a lot of resources within Accenture. So I've met seriously wonderful people in the Pride network. have been able to help me tell my story and promote it. So I came out to like, well, 300 or so people in November of last year, which is absolutely wild. I've been featured in a crap ton of LinkedIn posts and stuff like that. And just the way they celebrate and validate me has been absolutely amazing to be a part of. So in terms of that recognition, my current workplace has been absolutely amazing for doing that. They're known as a really, they're known as a leading workplace for equality. So they're featured in the Australian Workplace Equality Index, Australian Workplace Equality Index. And they really live that value of respect for the individual, which I find really, really important. Personally, I have friends outside of work, I promise, and they've been really good at helping me get through some personal items that I need to get through. And yeah, not losing sight of who I have outside of work has been really important, especially during lockdown. Because I work with my team like 8 hours a day, which is honestly about as much more time than I get to go to sleep, which is not healthy, but I'm working on it as well. But yeah, having those strong connections with friends, with mentors, with my therapist has been absolutely amazing. And that's definitely what's kept me afloat for a long time.
So if you're comfortable, do you want to discuss what it was like coming out at work?
It was wild because like I said, I came from defense and then I went to government and then I came here. And in none of those workplaces up until now had I expected to get the sort of reception that I would when I came out here. There was so much vocal support for me when I came out. And it was really validating to see that I was still valued for my work and not for who I was. I think that's something that a few narratives that I've seen don't really highlight. The fact that I'm not celebrated for being trans non-binary. I'm celebrated for being a kick-ass dev and for being really helpful to people and for organizing merchandise and for all the other stuff that I do volunteering wise during the workplace, at the workplace. And yeah, it was the acknowledgement that I am trans non-binary and my pronouns are they, she, and people still want to work with me and they respect that and they are so good at doing that during the workplace that it wasn't really a big deal when I came out. I'd built up those friendships at work. I'd been supported by the Pride Network so much that it wasn't all that intimidating.
That's fantastic. That's really great to hear. Because I think that, yeah, for a lot of people, there's that fear that it will be a really destabilizing thing, especially professionally. So it's really encouraging that you've been able to have that experience. So to what degree do you think that self-advocacy has played a role in getting to where you are now?
You go through high school and you go through whatever education system you've been through and you're like, oh, well, I got this ATAR or I got this IB score or whatever. Then you go through university and you get, some GPA, you get a WAM for all your subjects and you're like, okay, I've proven myself, and you have to do that again in industry. So I think in that sense, being able to prove that I can do the work I've been assigned and to take initiative and to take charge in some cases for other projects, that's been a really strong part of my development as a professional. Especially in the tech industry, you will get that sort of expectation that in order to be recognized or perhaps even respected, you do need to perform well at your role, regardless of your identity, regardless of who you are as a person. So that is daunting, and it does feed into a couple of negative stereotypes about the industry, which are valid representations. So in terms of self-advocacy playing a role in getting to where I am now, I have had to stick up for myself in terms of this is my work, I'm standing by it, and I know I'm competent, and this is how I communicate it. So in that sense, it's not just doing the work, it's also technical communication. And that sort of paved the way for people to respect me as a worker before they respected me as a person. So I'd say in the places where I've worked, self-advocacy has played a large part in getting to where I am, even before I came out.
So how do you think that you built that for yourself, that ability to, to like stand by your work?
I basically grew a backbone when I was in uni, which is absolutely wild to think about. In high school, I hilariously went to an all-boys high school, and there it was pretty smooth sailing until I got to university, and then I had to be like, gosh, how do I talk to people? How do I communicate my work? How do I get noticed in the eyes of industry when there are all these other grads who've done, sports, who've done internships, all that sort of stuff. So I did a lot of volunteering, and that helped me build up the experience of working in different teams, because not everyone else would be from an engineering background. I'd have to talk with and share my vision of how things would be done with people from other disciplines. So communication and standing by your ideas is super important. And that's sort of what I built up in university. During internships, so I did one at a defense company and I did a second one at a government office. I was able to get a taste of what people look for in a professional sense. I remember I had this one really good mentor who told me that respect is the only currency that's valued in the workplace. I don't know if that's the message I want to tell people, but that's the message I was given. And I earned it by, I think, doing well at the job I was assigned and speaking with people. I actually got into running during my second internship. I wasn't much of a sporty person before. I played ultimate frisbee, but I actually got into running during my second internship because everyone was like, "Hey, Val, no one plays ultimate frisbee in the office. Come running with me." And I thought, you know what? I can prove myself to these people. I've done ultimate frisbee. I can go running. I got my butt kicked really hard during that first lunchtime session, but I kept going back and being willing to try that and connect with people on a more personal level, even when they respect you for the job you do, that was what really helped me build up who I was.
So when you were graduating, going back to, I think that was 2018 for you, wasn't it?
Scary time.
Yeah. How did you feel? Like, what sort of things were you concerned about? And how do you feel about those things now that you're out there in industry?
I was so scared about not getting a job. It was like, I don't want to do all this and have it be for nothing. Because by that time, I'd been on a couple of committees. I'd been careers liaison for Monash Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering Club. I'd done a lot of stuff with Engineers Without Borders. I'd even did my final year project with them, investigating how policymaking in developing nations works. Now that I'm graduated, I think just 2 weeks ago, I ran a student bootcamp, which is basically where Accenture takes devs and professionals like myself and runs a week-long sort of training center for students. And a lot of those concerns that I had when I graduated, I could sort of see in the students. They were like, am I going to get a job out of this? What can I do to stand out? That sort of stuff. And so I like to think that I haven't really lost sight of that. So I do a couple of recruiting events. I do outreach and volunteering. I do a lot of that because I remember the feeling of helplessness when a company says, no, we're not taking you on, please try again next year or next wave, stuff like that. And I completely empathize with that. My greatest concern when I graduated was not getting a job. And I don't want to dismiss that for people who are out there feeling the same. So that's what I do now.
Do you mind if I ask actually what your grades
Yeah,
were
sure.
like? Because I feel like that's kind of something, because I feel like people sort of think you have to be the best, like you have to just get straight HDs and roll through, and that's how you get a job, you know?
Okay. My grades were not that great. I think I graduated with a 2 point something out of 4 GPA. I think during my entire degree, I got like 7 or 8 HDs. Most of them were Ds, Cs, a couple of Ps here and there. I know in my second year, I failed 3 out of 8 units. Yeah. So that's the sort of background I'm talking about. I tanked at exams. So yeah, when I graduated, I had a GPA of 2.39, I think is the number itself. But my WAM has been as low as like 1 point whatever it is, 1.9 or something like that at different times during my uni degree. I was not a great student.
And so do you, and because clearly that hasn't been much of a predictor of how you've worked in industry so far.
No, I don't think so. In the group in which I work, which is about 500 or so people across the world, I'm known as one of the go-to people for front-end and back-end development, so full stack development, working with a big data platform. So I regularly get people asking me to, hey, can you give us a lesson on how to perform this using this particular tool? So yeah, I don't think grades are a big decider of how successful you will be in industry. Sure, it opens a couple of doors. I got rejected from so many companies on the basis of your grades aren't good enough, which I completely understand, and it sucks to hear. But I don't think that should be a criterion, because I've seen it both in myself and in others, how much they can thrive when given the appropriate, when placed in the appropriate environment and given the right tools to succeed and the right people around them to support them.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of interested in, because it's obviously you did get an internship out of uni, is that correct? Can you just take me through sort of like your early steps coming out of university and into the workforce?
Okay, so in my penultimate year, I actually got the internship with the defense company. And that was on the basis of me doing an aerospace engineering degree and also doing programming. Because apparently there's not a lot of people who do that combination. So I went to work at the defense company. I investigated neural networks for semantic segmentation, and that got me the experience of having to communicate technical ideas to non-technical people, because we had students over, we had people who were in the upper echelons of the company come to visit, all that sort of stuff. And I'd be the person to say, this is what we've done, this is what you can get out of it, and this is where we think the vision should go. So that was my first taste of industry. It was super intense. I worked with a lot of smart people, and that really set me up for my second internship, which was in my final year, where I worked at a local government office, or sorry, a state government office. So that involved designing an application to store data, to enable access to engineers, to be used on the web, in mobile, all that sort of stuff. So I worked on that, and that was a lot of understanding the decisions that go behind approving a project like that, what sort of outcomes, what sort of stakeholders are there, because it wasn't just, yeah, you have all these resources, deliver us something, as it was with the R&D. It was like, we have these constraints, can you work within these to provide a solution within X time? And so that gave me a taste of delivering under pressure. And it also taught me that perfect is the enemy of the good. I was still the sort of student who wanted to do everything perfectly. I had to have perfect code. I had to architect this with no room for error. I had to make this scalable. I had to make it accessible to all. And I couldn't complete all those within the time limit. Fortunately, I had a team there to help me in that sense and provide their input on how best to approach these sorts of problems. And so that was good. I think it's still being used by the state government office at the moment. And that sort of led me into my first software engineering job, where I took on a wider role in the rollout and deployment of that application at the state government office. So those were the two experiences that I had before coming to my current job as I stepped out of uni. And I think that was what enabled me to hit the ground running in terms of being who I am at my current company.
Hmm. So, because obviously that, especially that last one, was very technically heavy.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you developed most of those skills in uni, or was this sort of like this ongoing learning process? What was that like?
Definitely an ongoing learning process, because in uni, I really liked my IT units much more than my engineering units. But even then, the stuff that I learned from working in industry, and that was so much more than I got out of university. Not to say that it's useless at all. It does provide you with a really good working foundation. Algorithms and data structures. If I could go back, I would have done databases, but I didn't get databases done. And so I got rejected from like Google because they're like, everything's perfect. You pass the everything test, like your psychometric test, your algorithms and data structures. We like you, but your database isn't good enough. And so that, yeah. So I got rejected from that job on the basis of that. So I wouldn't say uni is useless, but there is a lot of value in getting whatever industry experience you can. I know a couple of friends who did internships at much bigger companies, FANG companies, for example, and they've moved on to work at smaller companies because they find out that startups, they enable them to explore more or stuff like that. So I believe it is a lot of self-directed learning, at least in the tech industry. I am provided with a set of tasks to do during the workday. And I have the latitude to do them however I like, depending on what technologies I want to use, depending on what I want to learn even. I've incorporated elements of my learning into my work. So if I want to use more Lambda functions, for example, in AWS, then I'll design a serverless solution for this particular problem that I'm working on. Stuff like that. And having a supportive team in industry to help you with that is a lot that you won't get in university. So my technical ability has absolutely skyrocketed, and there's still more to go. There are way smarter people in industry than I am who've done so much more, and I want to learn from them because I am super passionate about tech, and that shows.
I think that's really valuable information to have, because I feel like you kind of feel like you have to come out of uni being like, yep, I know all the things. Trust me, I can do all the things. Yeah.
It's definitely a bonus. I can tell you this. I've done interviews where people have been like, and this is how I approach this problem. And I've been like, you know what? I never thought about that before. So you do come across like super outstanding students, but that's not to say that you have to be one in order to get hired.
So we're gonna switch gears a little bit and take a little bit of a breather question. So what is the favorite part of your current work? What do you love the most about what you do?
What do I like about my current workplace? The fact that I get to, and this isn't actually about my development work, the fact that I am seen as a figure who can help people. So I do a lot of work with employee and student engagement. And that's just a fancy term for I run social events, pizza nights, trivia nights, movie nights. I host archery sessions. I'm super into archery, target archery. Thank you.
That's so cool. That's really cool.
Being able to have fun while you're at work and having respect for individuals is super important. And that's what I do with all the employee and student engagement events that I run. So for me, it's not just about enjoying my work when I'm doing development. It's about enjoying my work when I'm doing, leadership type stuff, when I'm doing engagement type stuff, all that sort. My favorite part of the tech side of work, like I said earlier, is the latitude to incorporate my learning into it. A lot of the times in previous experiences, it's been you can learn these technologies and you can only learn these technologies because we know they're going to help you with your work here. But here, I get to actually learn what I want to learn and apply that in a way that will work and people will support me for it. And they'll recognize that as, I guess, what people call innovation. So that's really cool too.
So has that ever actually gone wrong? Like what happens on the other side of that?
There are people who know, okay, so the company where I work is about 600,000 people. Like there are going to be people who notice when things go wrong. So, but that also means that there are people who I can ask for help whenever I'm unsure about something and who can check over my work and do all that sort of code review, architectural discussions, all that sort of stuff to make sure I'm on the right track. I can take an idea and I can run with it, but it doesn't mean a lot without the people to support me and the people to believe in the solution that I'm presenting as well. So I also have that sort of support to make sure that it doesn't go wrong.
So what are some things in industry that you would like to see improved with how it handles members of the trans non-binary community or other communities that you might want to speak on?
Let's start off with an easy one. Binary gender forms. I hate those. Being called sir or ma'am, I'm not about that. Like it's a lot of leftover stuff that as a technology company, I feel like my company should be able to handle better. And my industry should be able to handle better because like we write the forms and the process that go behind them. And that's more of a comment, not on the technical side of things, but on how the tech industry sees people. One thing that a couple of my mentors and I am fond of saying is every technology problem is a people problem. So understanding how people use technology and having empathy for the experiences of everyone who use our solutions, that's something that everyone in the industry needs to work on, myself included. There have been times when I've designed things like a color blindness filter or larger text or accessibility options, and it hasn't taken off as much as I thought it would. It's stupid included, of course. But a lot of the times in industry, people are focused on the technical outcome rather than the people outcome. And so on a broader scale, I think the industry has a long way to go in terms of recognizing people, not just for the work they do, but for the work that they represent, for the people, for the communities that they represent. And designing for those is really important. I actually have a book. Can I grab a book?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you can see it. It's called
Okay,
Invisible Woman. I don't know if you've heard about it before.
No, I haven't.
It basically talks about how systems are designed for men. Invisible Woman, this book, reveals how, in a world largely built for and by men, we are systematically ignoring half the population, often with disastrous consequences. There is a lot of that, not just in my industry, but in many industries. And yes, it's about women, but it's about every other minority community out there. Routinely, we see cis white male CEOs, managers, team leads making decisions that don't consider the impact it would have on other members of other communities. And that's a large problem to tackle. I'm not doing it alone, of course, but whenever I do stuff like color blindness filters, or color blindness options, accessibility options, whenever I do like user experience oriented service design, I don't think it's celebrated enough and taken as seriously as, oh, you've implemented a 2 order of magnitude performance improvement in this monitoring application's capacity or stuff like that, which is stuff I've done before as well. So improvements I'd like to see around how industry handles members, or how industry recognizes and sees and designs for members of minority communities, is there's definitely a lot more empathy that needs to go into design at a ground level and at high level. So whenever we're designing components, whenever we're designing solutions, we need to pay more attention to what sort of use cases and user stories we're designing for. Technology is designed for people, and we need to be more rigorous when we ask who exactly we're designing these things for. So specifically, stuff like binary gender forms, I hate them. Specifically, things like, text that you can't resize on an application, stuff like that, or buttons that are too close together. All that factors into how, as an industry, we need to grow to recognize that the people that develop them, the people that use them, stuff like that.
Building on that, like, what are some sort of tips, like key tips that you would want to give to people who share your experience? You could also view it as, what would you want to say to your uni self or something like that?
Okay, that's an easy one. Gosh, what would I say to my uni self? Dude, you are so repressed. There's definitely that. But also, don't stress about not getting a full 100 mark on that assignment. It's totally fine to make mistakes along the way. You're still learning. Do take care of your mental health. I know this is one time when I was doing career liaison, basically talking to people in the industry, as you're doing now, for a careers night, and being like, crap, I haven't sent out that email. And then I woke up the next day, having fallen asleep at my desk, trying to draft something up. And I was like, I didn't even open my eyes. The first thing that I noticed was how hard my heart was beating because of all the stress that was weighing on it. And I was like, that's not healthy. Being able to keep things in perspective and understand that, yeah, you statistically are likely to get a job after uni, and you will be able to, and you will be given the opportunity to move and explore different areas of your life after university. You don't have to stop learning now. You don't have to stop making mistakes now. In fact, you won't stop making mistakes now. It's not going to help. I'm still going to be the same strong-headed, super, almost toxically masculine person that I was back then. But having someone say that to me and understanding that it's more than okay to make mistakes. Also learn how to communicate, please. That would be a good thing. So I guess in terms of people who share my experiences as being in the closet or as being trans or being non-binary, on that front, I would say it's totally fine to take things at your own pace. A lot of the narrative around trans people talks about it as a journey. It's totally fine to reframe that as a narrative around exploration. You don't have to be going somewhere. You don't have to have an ideal that you need to work towards. You can find your own gender euphoria. You can find what you want to learn. And that's just as valid of a journey as anyone else's.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just processing that really, really beautiful sentiment at the end there. So thank you so much. I'll wrap us up there, but thank you so much for joining me. You've been an absolutely amazing first guest to have on.
No, thank you for your time. I hope that people get a lot out of what I've said. I'm getting a lot out of what I said. Being able to sit down and actually say those things out loud has been super helpful. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much to everybody for joining us for our very first episode of the Thrive series. If you are interested in the book that Val recommended, that will be in the link down below. While you're down there, you can also check out our link tree. We have links to our Facebook, Instagram, our newsletter, our LinkedIn, and you can also join our Discord server. That's a really good one. We've just introduced major chats. So that means that you can find people who are interested in or doing the same majors as you and connect that way. So it's a really good one to look out for. If you follow us on any of these platforms, then you will get updates about the Thrive series and any new episodes that come out, but you will also hear about all of the cool events that we put on during semester. So feel free to check out any of those, but ultimately, thank you so much for coming, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.